Surviving sailors break their silence 40 years after Israeli attack on U.S. Navy ship by Dr. Paul Craig Roberts. June the 8th, 1967, the fourth day of the six-day war between Israel and Egypt, Syria and Jordan, was a beautiful day in the Mediterranean. The USS Liberty was in international waters off the coast of Egypt. Israeli aircraft had flown over the USS Liberty in the morning and had reported that the ship was American. The crew, in close proximity to the war zone, was reassured by the presence of Israeli aircraft. But at 2 p.m., sailors, sunbathing on the deck, saw fighter jets coming at them in attack formation. Red flashes from the wings of the fighters were followed by explosions, blood, and death. A beautiful afternoon suddenly became a nightmare. Who was attacking the USS Liberty, and why? The attack on the Liberty was an attack on America. The Liberty was an intelligence ship. Its purpose was to monitor Soviet and Arab communications in order to warn both Israel and Washington should the Soviet enter the war on behalf of its Arab allies. The Liberty was armed only with 4 machine guns to repel boarders. Its request for a destroyer escort had been denied. The assault on the Liberty is well documented. With no warning, the Liberty was attacked by successive waves of unmarked jets using cannon, rockets, and napalm. The attacking jets jammed all of the U.S. communication frequencies, an indication they knew the Liberty was an American ship. The air attack failed to sink the Liberty. About 30 minutes into the attack, 3 torpedo boats appeared flying the Star of David. The Israeli boats were not on a rescue mission. They attacked the Liberty with cannon, machine guns, and torpedoes. One torpedo struck the Liberty midship, instantly killing 25 Americans while flooding the lower decks. The Israeli torpedo boats destroyed the life raft the Liberty launched when the crew prepared to abandon ship, sending the message there would be no survivors. At approximately 3:15, 2 French-built Israeli helicopters carrying armed Israeli troops appeared over the Liberty. Phil Tornay could see their faces only 50 to 60 feet away. He gave them the finger. Surviving crew members are convinced the Israelis were sent to board and kill all survivors. The Israeli jets destroyed the Liberty's communication antennas. While under attack from the jets, crew members strung lines that permitted the ship to send a call for help. The U.S. Saratoga and the U.S. America launched fighters to drive off the attacking aircraft, but the rescue mission was aborted by direct orders from Washington. When the Liberty notified the Sixth Fleet it was again under attack, this time from surface ships, the fleet commander ordered the carriers America and Saratoga to launch fighters to destroy or drive off the attackers. The order was unencrypted and picked up by Israel, which immediately called off its attack. The torpedo boats and the hovering helicopters sped away. Israel quickly notified Washington that it had mistakenly attacked an American ship, and the U.S. fighters were recalled a second time. The USS Liberty suffered 70% casualties, with 34 killed and 174 wounded. Although the expensive state-of-the-art ship was kept afloat by the heroic crew, it later proved unsalvageable and was sold as scrap. Why didn't help come? No explanation has been given by the U.S. government for Defense Secretary Robert McNamara and President Lyndon B. Johnson's orders for the Sixth Fleet to abort the rescue mission. Lieutenant Commander David Lewis of the Liberty told colleagues that Admiral L. R. Geis, commander of the Sixth Fleet Carrier Force, told him that when he challenged McNamara's order to recall the rescue mission, LBJ came on the line and said he didn't care if the ship sank. He wasn't going to embarrass an ally. The communications officer handling the transmission has given the same account. A BBC documentary on the Israeli raid reports that confusion about the attacker's identity almost resulted in a U.S. assault on Egypt. Robert Parker, U.S. political counsel in Cairo, confirms in the BBC documentary that he received official communication that an American retaliatory attack on Egypt was on its way. The U.S. government's official position on the USS Liberty corresponds with Israel's. The attack was unintentional, and a result of Israeli blunders. This is the official position, despite the fact that CIA Director Richard Helms, Secretary of State David Rusk, and Assistant Secretary of State Lucilius Battle, and a long list of U.S. Navy officers, government officials, and Liberty survivors are on record saying that the Israeli attack was intentional. According to Helms, Battle, and the minutes of a White House meeting, President Johnson believed the attack was intentional. Helms says LBJ was furious and complained when the New York Times buried the story on page 29, but that Johnson decided he had to publicly accept Israel's explanation. The political pressure was too much, Helms said. U.S. communications personnel, intelligence analysts, and ambassadors report having read U.S. intercept of Israelis' orders to attack the Liberty. In one intercept, an Israeli pilot reports that the Liberty is an American ship and asks for a repeat and clarification of his orders to attack an American ship. One Israeli who identified himself as one of the pilots later came to America and met with U.S. Representative Peter McCloskey and Liberty survivors. The pilot said he refused to participate in the attack when he saw it was an American ship. He was arrested upon returning to the base. The Liberty flew the U.S. flag. The ship's markings, GTR-5, measured several feet in height on both sides of the bow. On the stern, the ship was clearly marked USS Liberty. Mistaking the Liberty for an Egyptian ship, as Israel claims to have done, was impossible. Tattered flags show ferocity of the attacks. The Israelis claim the Liberty flew no flag, but 2 U.S. flags full of holes from the attack exist. When the first flag was shot down, crewmen replaced it with a flag 7 feet by 13 feet. This flag with its battle scars is on display at NSA headquarters in Maryland. Admiral John S. McCain Jr., the father of the current U.S. Senator, ordered Admiral Isaac C. Kidd and Captain Walt Boston to hold a court of inquiry and to complete the investigation in only 1 week. In a signed affidavit, Captain Boston said President Johnson ordered a cover-up and that he and Admiral Kidd were prevented from doing a real investigation. Liberty survivors were ordered never to speak to anyone about the event. Their silence was finally broken 12 years later when Lieutenant Commander James M. Enos published his book, Assault on the Liberty. It is now established fact that the attack on the Liberty was intentional and was covered up by President Johnson and every administration since. There has never been a congressional investigation, nor has the testimony of the majority of survivors ever been officially taken. Disgusted by the U.S. government's official stand discounting the survivors' reports, Admiral Tom Morrow, retired Chief of Naval Operations and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, organized the Morrow Commission to make public the known facts about the attack and cover-up. The commission consisted of Admiral Morrow, former Judge Advocate General of the U.S. Navy Admiral Marlin Starling, Marine Corps General Raymond G. Davis, and former U.S. Ambassador to Saudi Arabia James Akins. The commission's report concluded that there is compelling evidence that Israel's attack was a deliberate attempt to destroy an American ship and kill her entire crew. That fearing conflict with Israel, the White House deliberately prevented the U.S. Navy from coming to the defense of USS Liberty by recalling 6th Fleet military rescue support while the ship was under attack. That surviving crew members were threatened with court-martial, imprisonment, or worse if they exposed the truth, and the survivors were abandoned by their own government. That there has been an official cover-up without precedent in American naval history. That a danger to our national security exists whenever our elected officials are willing to subordinate American interests to those of any foreign nation. Why did Israel attack the Liberty? Was something super secret going on that was so damaging that it must be protected at all costs? Some experts believe Tel Aviv decided to sink the Liberty because the ship's surveillance capability would discover Israel's impending invasion and capture of Syria's Golan Heights, an action opposed by Washington. Others believe Israel was concerned the Liberty would discover Israel's massacre of hundreds of Egyptian POWs, a war crime contemporaneous with the attack on the US ship. Still others believe that Israel intended to blame the attack on Egypt in order to bring America into the war. It is known the US were providing Israel with a reconnaissance and that there were joint US-Israeli covert operations against the Arabs that Washington was desperate to keep secret. Survivors with whom I spoke said the attack was the easy part of the experience. The hard part has been living with 40 years of official cover-up and betrayal by the US government. One survivor said that he was asked to leave his Baptist church when he spoke about the liberty because the minister and fellow churchgoers felt more loyalty to Israel than to a member of the congregation who had served his country. His church position was that if our government believed Israel, the survivors should also. Survivor Phil Toney said that being forced to live with a cover-up is like being raped and no one will believe you. Survivor Gary Brumnett said he feels like someone who's been locked up for 40 years on a wrongful conviction. Until the US government acknowledges the truth of the attack, Brumnett says the survivors are forced to live with the anger and dismay of being betrayed by the country they served. Survivor Bruce Lockwood has been angry for 40 years. The torpedo that killed his shipmates, wrecked his ship, and damaged his health was made in the USA. Survivor Ernie Galo told me that he has been haunted for 4 decades by the knowledge that his commander-in-chief recalled the US fighters that could have prevented most of the Liberty's casualties. Every American should be troubled by the fact that the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense prevented the US Sixth Fleet from protecting a US Navy ship and its 294-man crew from foreign attack. They should also be troubled that the President ordered the Navy to determine the attack was unintentional. This article is based entirely on documented sources and on interviews with 6 USS Liberty survivors, as well as Captain Ward Boston and Bill Knudsen, the executive officer of the USS American Fighter Squadron, dispatched on the first aborted rescue mission.